Chapter 60. Lorton Sports. Lorton had a sports program where the best boxers, football, and basketball teams would travel to the other prisons to compete, in addition to teams that came from the street. The feds and probably every other prison in America had nothing comparable. Youth Center 2 would hold boxing matches a couple times a year. It would be like a scene from the 1979 blaxploitation movie Penitentiary. Crowds of convicts cheering as the fighters took the ring. Most people sitting or standing on the bleachers had a weapon in their waist or one close by. Two of the fighters there, Danny Boy and Jerry, was rumored to be signing with Don King upon release. Jerry was to be rival to Mike Tyson with a thicker, muscular build and a neck of a bull. He used to jog around a prison yard with a corroded 400-pound wood utility light pole on his shoulders. Unfortunately, neither got the chance to show off their skills. They both were killed not long after their release. Chapter 61. Badge of Honor. Every visiting hall that I experienced, 99% of the time black women were the sole riders. They stood in lines in freezing weather and traveled thousands of miles to support their husbands, boyfriends, child father, friends, fathers, and sons. My family, consisting of mostly women, and my homies would visit me at Youth Center 2 and then drive 15 minutes down the country roads to visit my brother at Youth Center 1. It was taking a toll on my family, but to our friends in the streets in general, being in Lorton was like a badge of honor. Because of Lorton's reputation of ruthlessness, surviving there was honorable. As kids, we all heard stories of people going to Lorton, never to return. We all heard stories of people getting butchered, riots, overcrowding and escapes, men getting stabbed and stitching themselves up with syringe needles and sewing thread, an officer beheaded and stuffed in a sewer hole, young boys getting carried off of the bus and into a dormitory to be raped, men that had no thoughts of going home, so keeping you there with them was a priority. Guys we thought were tough, only to later hear that they were washing other men's underwear in Lorton, or they were flunkies down Lorton, or they were getting their valuables taken from them down Lorton, with no retaliation. We heard stories of a female civilian that had snuck onto the compound after a visit and she hid in a mop closet for a few days. She was being pimped out to 10 to 20 different men a day. We heard stories of homosexuals celebrating when one of them got married to another convict or had a baby. Having a baby meant that it was so much cum inside of them that it all drained out at once. I didn't fear Lorton one bit. I was actually intrigued by the stories from the older guys coming home. I also understood that the people in Lorton were only human, and all humans bled the same. I knew I would eventually end up there, and I knew how I would carry it once I got there. I wasn't going to change who I was, because I was somewhere where I didn't want to be. I wasn't going to be scared, timid, or religious. I wasn't going to be a dope fiend, or crackhead, or forced into homosexuality. I didn't have C-sections from bullet wounds on the streets, so I definitely wasn't going to be wearing keloids from knife wounds in prison. I was going to be the same on the inside as I was on the outside. A renegade, a soldier, a hustler, a killer. Chapter 62. Minimum Security, 1993. After almost a year, I was transferred to minimum security, which was 2 miles away from medium, aka Youth Center 2. It was because of my eligibility to see the parole board within the next 18 months. Prison had 5 corroded metal and concrete slab buildings that held 500 convicts. It was constructed in 1985. 3 of the buildings, called the Minimum Security Annex, were constructed in 1954 as part of the Lorton Nike launch site. It was named after the Greek goddess of victory. They were once a part of a chain of Nike missiles erected around the DC area to protect the nation's capital from a nuclear attack during the Cold War. Nike was primarily surface-to-air missiles. Minimum had a small fence with no concertina wires. Everybody here was going home within the next 2 years or so. In 1980, 4 armed men invaded here looking for an informant. They found him in one of the dormitories and gunned him down before escaping. They were later arrested and convicted. It was also here that an 18-year-old girl came to visit her boyfriend, but then snuck onto the compound and into a dormitory. It was said that once her boyfriend snuck her in to have sex, dozens of other convicts took control of her and had sex with her also. He was forced to watch. Minimum's compound was wide open, and we were able to roam freely until like 10 p.m. While at Medium, the administration had brought 50 women convicts onto the compound for housing because of overcrowding. They slept on top of the chow hall. We weren't allowed to mingle with them, but some men found ways to do it. But Minimum had a female prison directly beside it that shared a perimeter fence. It was constructed in the late 80s. Before it was built, the women arrested in D.C. was sent to West Virginia to serve time. The women prison didn't have a school, chow hall, or a rec yard, so they came into the male prison through a security gate 4 times a day, 3 times to eat and once to spend a couple hours on a rec yard. A few of them worked in the administration building. The men would be separated when they came into the prison, but the separation was only a few feet away. We could see them, talk to them, make hand signals, and get their prison numbers so we could write to them. The hand signals became a language unto itself. One day the women came down to eat, and I saw a girl named Sierra that I used to date. She was over there. She got arrested because someone left a pistol in her car and they gave her 18 months. I was actually surprised how happy we were to see each other. She couldn't stop waving and I couldn't stop smiling. The next day I got a letter from her telling me how much the streets was missing me and she couldn't wait for me to come home. She wanted to be the first one to spend the night with me. The next day, one of my homies on the compound told me he was planning on escaping from the minimum prison and sneak over to the female prison to see his girlfriend and ask if I wanted to go. Thought about it long and hard. We would be technically escaping out of one prison to break into another prison to have sex, then break back out of that prison and break back into this prison, all before count time. Fuck it. Let's go. The next night, right after an evening body count, we snuck out of the dormitory and headed straight towards the back where the fence was. The grass and bushes was thick, so it was easy to duck down and watch out for any patrolling officers. We waited for 15 minutes, then headed for the fence. The homie knew the way because he had done it twice before. He told me it was fun and easy. He was 23. I was 22. We scaled the fence with ease because it had no concertina wires on the top. Just in certain locations it had it on the bottom. On the other side of the fence was also thick grass and bushes. Once a month the Virginia State Police would walk through the grass for a routine check, which they had done a week earlier. We laid in the grass for 10 minutes, then walked in a squat position until we got to the female prison, which had no fence around it. It was also a minimum security. We still had to be cautious to watch out for officers or lesbians. I hadn't touched a woman in almost 4 years. I hadn't heard from my ex-girlfriend in at least 3. Getting caught would get us transferred back to medium or maximum, in addition to an escape charge, and a 2-year parole set-off. Being in the federal system and the medium maximum security prisons made me know exactly what prison was. But now I was at minimum, so I might as well enjoy it. Making parole and being released anytime soon was iffy, so I was up for the challenge. Once we got to the female prison, the homie knew exactly where to go. We snuck around the back to an administration building, then around to the back of one of the dormitories. we still had to be quiet and cautious. Once we got to the back of the dormitory, he pulled the cracked door open and we walked straight into an emergency stairway exit. Through the door in the stairway window, we could see dozens of female prisoners in the dormitory, but they couldn't see us. I recognized the one at the water fountain. I once had to go to the captain's office at minimum to retrieve some cassette tapes that were confiscated by a rogue officer. I also had a disciplinary report, also called a shot, for calling him a whore. I walked to the side of the administration building and peeked through the side of the window blinds to see if the captain was in there before I went in. I saw him with his pants around his ankles fucking the girl at the water fountain, doggy style. I minded my business and returned back to my dormitory. So now we went up the steps and his girlfriend was right there waiting for him. She had left the door cracked open for him. She was butt naked with a towel wrapped around her and was stunned to see me with him. The homie told her to call my homegirl Sierra. She knew exactly who it was because Sierra was the prettiest girl in the prison, so she immediately left. I looked at the homie, he was smiling. Slim, I was slipping. I should have told you to bring a rubber. You got one? Damn, I didn't. Damn, I had some too, but you know, I be going raw dog. So we laughed. Fuck it. Just get some head. Don't take too long though. We got to get out of here before count time. We have enough time, but I'm rolling in about 15 minutes just in case they have an emergency count. You know how they do sometimes. Shit, I didn't even think about the emergency counts, especially if someone saw us sneak out of the dormitory. It took around 2 minutes for his girl to return with Sierra, but that 2 minutes felt like 2 hours. As soon as she saw me, her face lit up and she dived into my arms. The homie and his girl wasted no time. Within a second, her towel was on the ground and he was sliding up in her doggy style. Sierra understood the situation and didn't even try to indulge in small talk. She immediately got on her knees and began handling her business. Even though I heard about when certain officers were working, it was an orgy up here, I was still paranoid and kept my eyes open the whole time. I heard about some of the lesbians would get jealous whenever they saw a dude sneak up there, and they would tell the administration and get you an escape charge. They were competing for the same girl. I heard about all the male officers that was fucking the female prisoners, and they would get information from them about what dudes was breaking out of minimum to come up there to fuck, and they would get them transferred out of minimum because they wanted the girl. Getting around them personally wasn't too hard because Lorton always had a shortage of officers because of budget shortfalls. Our main adversaries were the lesbians. The homie wasn't tripping at all. He was having the time of his life. Sierra wasn't tripping either. She was slurping and gulping. After a few minutes, she started pulling her shorts off. I stopped her. I told her we could do it next time because I forgot to bring the rubbers. She was disappointed but understood. She then went back to slurping and gulping. After 15 minutes, we were all done. The homie girl was in heaven. Sierra was smiling, and we were back on stealth mode, sneaking back into the thick grass and bushes. Within 10 minutes, we were back at minimum prison, climbing over the fence. We had a few homies that were waiting in the window, and as soon as they saw us, one of them would go and distract the officer in the office, while the other would sneak past and open the dormitory door for us. The next week, we would do the same thing for them.